Hello and welcome to this lecture, and in this lecture we are going to talk something about variables. So variables are nothing but they are something which are going to basically change with time, or they are actually going to basically change with the input which the user enters. So what I mean by that is if you notice that whenever you open up Facebook and you basically have your ID like facebook.com/your ID, that is going to be your Facebook ID, and that ID is actually going to be different for each one of you. So when you type in facebook.com/your friend's name, then your friend's ID is going to appear, and when you type in facebook.com/your name or your ID, that means your page is going to get added up over there. So we could do the same kind of things by using something which is called as a variable. So in order to understand it in a much more better way, let's go ahead and take an example. So let's delete the entire code which we had before, and let's write in the new code. So let's type in @app.route, and this time what we are going to do is that we are going to type in something which is called as profile slash, and instead of having the name of a particular person, we are going to mention a variable here. So whenever you actually want to mention a variable, you mention them in these kinds of brackets. That is nothing but the less than sign and the greater than sign. So in between these two signs, you could specify the name of the variable. So let's say we want the profile of a particular person, so let's type in name here, and what you could do right below it, you could specify the function associated with this particular URL. So let's say whenever you want to visit a particular person's profile page, you want to see their details. So let's create a function here. So let's type in def, let's say this is going to be profile, and to this function you are going to pass in the variable which is name, because this function actually needs the information about the person, as it actually wants to display all the details related to that person. So after having that name, what you could do is that you could return something. Let's say you want to return the person's name here, so you could type in this profile belongs to, and here you actually want to mention the name which the person has entered here. So in order to do that, you simply type in %s, and s actually stands for a string, and right after this, go right after this quotations, and you could type in %sign again, and then the variable name which is name. Now what happens is that whenever you open up your website and you type in /profile/some name, so let's say the name is ABC, so what happens is that this function gets called, and to this function the name is passed, and that name is the name which you have typed in here. So this function takes that name and it is going to print out this profile belongs to, and instead of this %s, this %s is going to be replaced by this name right here. So in order to check if this thing actually performs correctly, let's save the code and let's run the server. So let's make sure that this thing is running. So you actually need to restart it again, then open up the browser, and here let's type in 127.0.0.1:5000 and /profile/ the name of the person. So I'm going to type my name, you could type yours, and when you hit enter, as you could see, this thing says that this profile belongs to Ashutosh. And if I actually go ahead and replace this thing by some other name, like let's say John, and when I hit enter, as you could see, this thing says that this profile belongs to John. So this is how actually you could use variables in Flask to associate a URL or create a dynamic URL with a particular function. And you could actually use anything right over here. So instead of passing in name, you could actually go ahead and have a unique profile number or profile ID. So what you could do, if you actually want to use an integer over here instead of a string, you could simply specify the data type here. So you could type an integer, and let's say that is going to be ID. So you simply need to pass an ID over here instead of the name, and also As this thing is an integer value, instead of %s, you actually need to specify %d, which is used for integers, and also replace this name by id, and you're basically good to go. Now if you want to check if this thing is performing correctly, you could save the code. You could again restart your server, again run your application, open up the browser, and actually this is not the one, and here you could type in profile / an ID, which is, let's say, 100. So if you hit enter this time, as you could see, this thing says that this profile belongs to 100. So that's how you could create dynamic URLs in Flask by using the route function and passing a variable into it. So if you actually want to pass in a string variable, you could simply specify the string name over here. But if you actually want to pass in an integer value, then you have to explicitly mention that you are passing an integer value, and instead of using the %s sign, what you need to do here is that you need to type in %d, as %d actually means an integer value, and you could also pass a floating value or a floating number here. So what you simply need to do in that case is that you want to replace this integer with float and this %d to %f, and now this thing will actually accept any decimal values as well or floating values as well. So that's it for this lecture, and this lecture was to just give you guys an idea of how variable rules actually work in Flask. So this thing is specifically important when you are looking for building dynamic URLs for your website. So that's it for this lecture, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.